Hey guys, my name is Moon and welcome back for more Witch on the Holy Night. So last time we had a nice fun conversation with Sojiro and Tobimaru. It was pretty good. So let us continue and let's see what happens in today's episode. Having recomposed themselves, the classes started chatting again. Aoko listened for a bit before turning around and leaving the class with a later. So she went here and then she just left. All the Sojiro talk finished as quickly as it started. Lunchtime was coming to a close in the student council room. Sojiro, having told his story, was smiling in satisfaction. Tobimaru, still sitting across from him, was frowning.
さあ、感想を聞かせてくれ。
Sojiro told his yarn as best as he could. Tobimaru fingered his brow as he was angry or concerned.
なあ、その字。お前、人をバカにできるほど器用なやつじゃねえよな。
Sonoji. He has a nickname for Sojiro now, Sonoji.
失礼な。器用な方だぞ、俺は。
His response only confirmed Tobimaru's suspicions. It had been or had to be one of the two possible conclusions. That what Sojiro had just told him was true. Or that Sojiro was so tired that he must have been hallucinating at the time. Tobimaru sincerely hoped it was the latter.
宗十郎、率直に言って、俺はお前が気に入っている。嘘のない人間なんてのは人間じゃねえ。俺は人間嫌いだから、そんなお前さんが気に入ってたりするんだが、そんなやつまで馬鹿げたことを言い出したら、俺は明日から何を頼りに昼飯を食えばいいんだ。
学食で食べればいいんじゃないか？
Hearing his suggestion, Tobimaru's face darkened.
わかった。はっきり言おう。それは幻覚だ。幽霊の正体見たり枯れ尾花ってやつだろうさ。それでも納得いかないってんなら、いい精神科を紹介してやる。
それが君の感想か。よし、ならいいんだ。
As bitter as Tobimaru's words might have sounded to most, Sojiro swallowed them whole.
そりゃ俺だって神隠しの類だと思ったよ。けど、都会じゃもしかしてそれもありなのかもしれないだろ。確かめたかったのはそこなんだ。
Satisfied, Sojiro finished off his last rice bowl and neatly folded the cloth.
おい、すると何か？お前は都会の人間は口から火を吹いたり、腕が伸びたりするのが普通だと思ったのか？
Extend their arms like they're made of rubber. Are they referencing Luffy from One Piece?
まあ普通じゃないけど、特別でもないんじゃないかと思ったんだ。ここは山にないものが溢れている何でもありの場所だ。だからそれぐらいやってのける人だってもしかしているのかなと。
That his face was as serious as it was made, Tobimaru realized just how big a culture shock Sojiro must have been experiencing. Living up in the mountains with no electricity, in a place where the night sky was as it always had been, where humans were just one more organisms in the nature's garden, it makes sense that those conditions would create a boy like him. The idea of children growing up so pure was an appealing one, but maybe it was natural to forego civilization when your population was so small. Or perhaps it was so simple, a world that excessive knowledge was deemed irrelevant. It was precisely city life offered him so much that it was impossible up until now that he had come to the conclusion that anything was possible here.
安心しろ。確かにこっちにはタチの悪い奴らばっかりだけどな。そんな魔法使いみたいな奴はいねえよ。
そうだといいんだけど。
But Sojiro seemed unsure. And on Tobimaru's part, there were things to Sojiro's story that he found hard to swallow. Whether true or not, the incident Soldier had described was disturbing.
まあ事の真偽というかどんな間違いでそう見えたかは置いておいてだ。結果だけ見ればうちの生徒が夜の公園で人を殺したってことになる。しかも双方控えめに表現しても普通じゃねえ。
As a newcomer to town, Soldier assumed that everyone his age was a student at this school. For better or worse, he was right.
一人は火炎放射器を持って、もう一人はまあなんだ、なぎなたでも持ち出したのか、刃物らしきものが何メートルも伸びたときた。
Soldier bobbed his head up and down as he listened to the disbelief in Tobimaru's voice. Hearing it repeated by someone else, he could see how someone might think he was taking them for a ride.
正気を疑うな。尋常じゃないぞその話。
宗十郎、お前実は俺をからかってんだろ。
いや全く。けどまあ都会にはそんな人間はいないんだろ。なら飛び丸の言う通り夢でも見てたんだ。ここのところアルバイトと試験が重なって辛くて。
Winter break was just around the corner and the end of the term exams were but a week away. Both were proving formidable opponents for Sojiro.
俺は基本ができてないから人の倍程度の勉強じゃ追いつけない。ほら勉強ばかりしているとノイローゼをするんだろ。
そりゃするんじゃなくてなるものだが、何にせよやりすぎ飲みすぎはよくねえわな。試験前ぐらいはバイト減らしたらどうだ。
減らしてはいるんだけどね。年末ってアルバイトを休む人も多くてその代行も頼まれがちだし。
He shrugged helplessly. It was obvious from his words that he had been busy. Even if he was not going crazy, a lack of sleep could have caused him to daydream, even if this all did go down in the middle of the night. Okay, sorry.
なんだか大変そうだな、宗十郎。
ああ、実はかなり参ってる。都会の暮らしは深刻だ。
Soldier nodded with a pained look on his face. What was strange, however, was that he did not look the least bit tired.
泣き言言わねえのは感心するけどな。お前、新郎は顔に出ないたちか？
そりゃ、新郎はどこも痛まないからね。
As he answered, the soldier looked up at the clock on the wall. Lunchtime was almost
飛び
over.
丸、時間だ。
ああ、もうそんなに経ったか。気にせず先に行ってていいぜ。俺はまだ用があるからよ。
Soldier watched as Tobimaru made a gesture that seemed to lament the life of a student council member. His eyes looked as if they were looking at a piece of art and not understanding its value.
授業をサボれる身分っていうのは羨ましいな。そういうの飛び丸が嫌いな手抜きじゃないのか？
そりゃ誤解も甚だしい。俺の欠席は手抜きじゃねえ。特権ってやつだと言ったろ。
The vice president angrily defended himself as he stood up. The transfer student merely gazed at him, unfazed.
おいおい、あれだけ説明したのに全然分かってなかったのか？しょうがねえ。まず座れ。いいか、その字。常人を上回る英気と幸運を兼ね備えながら座することなく精進してきた俺でもここを卒業しちまえば裸一貫になっちまうんだぞ。ひでえ話だ。てめえの家柄を活用できんのはあと1年ちょいだけなんだぜ。これの一体どこが羨ましいってんだ。普通一生続くはずの 親の七光ってやつが俺の場合はたった3年間しかねえんだからな。となりゃ有効なうちに使っておかなきゃもったいなくておちおち眠ってもいられねえ。ああ、嫌だ嫌だ。何が嫌かってバカどもとガン首並べて金勘定するのが嫌だ。たく嫉妬渦巻く大人の世界じゃ俺のオブラートみたいな心なんてパックリ飲まれて溶けちまうこと受け合いだろうさ。
While he must have been joking, Sojiro took his tone to be completely sincere. He listened as he envied Tobimaru's ability to be so open about his feelings. From his frame of reference, there was nothing he could do but take Tobimaru for his word. When...
あら、そんな権利なんて留年すればいくらでも引き延ばせるのに。なんなら協力してあげましょうか。この私でよろしければ。
Miss President arrives. The door to the student council room flew open, washing away Sojiro's half-hearted response to his friend. This frosty statement destroyed the warm atmosphere of the room, and it also marked the abrupt end to Tobimaru Tsukiji's reign there.
いや、いい。自分の夢は自分の力だけで叶えようと常々思ってるんだ。
そ？なら今みたいな恥ずかしいこと力説しないでね。廊下にまで聞こえてたわよ、副会長さん。
Not missing a beat, Aoko Aozaki stepped inside a room. Her dark hair was slightly disheveled as if she had been running. Her gaze missed the sitting Sojiro entirely and was focused completely on the ranting vice president.
頑張れ、飛び丸。
And then he left. Sojiro quietly got up to head back to his classroom.
割と薄情なんだな、お前って。
Yeah, he's just gonna leave him here. Tobimaru grumbled in front of Aoko.
だって時間がない。
だから、そういうのが薄情とだな。
He cut himself off. Aoko briefly shifted her gaze to Sojiro.
時間がないのは私も同じよ。あなたにはいつも振り回される。
Not a complaint, it was her honest opinion.
なんだ？要件は総十郎かよ。
安心なさい。あなたにもあるから。
Her eyes shimmered with a murderous glee. It was slightly different from the more sullen gaze to which Tobimaru had grown accustomed. For whatever reason, Aoko's mood seemed worse than usual.
しずきくん、あなた、走るのと泳ぐの、どっちが好き？
Aoko asked abruptly. Sojiro frowned a little before saying he was fine with either one.
ダメよ、一つにして。
泳ぐ方かな。けど、どうして？
あなたがまだどこの部にも所属してないから。
A succulent reply. One that left no room for Sojiro to object.
うちの校則読んだわよね。生徒はただ一人の例外もなく、部活動に参加しなくてはならない。正直どうかと思う校則だけど、決まりは決まりだから。
そんな無茶な。悪いけど、そこまでの暇はないんだ。
でしょうね。
An equally terse response. She was typically to the point, but Tobimaru got the impression that she was expressly trying to keep her interaction with Sojiro short. They stared at each other in silence. Tobimaru stood breathlessly silent on the sidelines until Sojiro broke the impasse.
青崎は分かってると思ってた。あ、いや違う。きっと分かっているんだな。だから、 そこが強いんだろうね。
Sojiro stood up from his seat. He walked past Aoko and into the hallway.
それ、明日からでいいんだろ？
しずきくんがいいならね。
Whatever works for Shizuki, okay? He did his best to force a smile before leaving the student council room. While watching the events play out, Tobimaru found himself deeply impressed with Sojiro. He could tell from Aoko's behavior that she was trying to get a rise out of Sojiro. Sojiro, on the other hand, was none the wiser to what Aoko was doing, so he simply went about his way. To Tobimaru, it was hard to believe that Sojiro had not taken offense. All he observed was the performance of a lifetime in Sojiro as he maintained a poker face.
いや、でも何が強いんだろうな、会長。
Kaicho. He looked at Aoko curiously. Look at her face. Aoko stood completely still, staring at a wall. Look at that.
青崎？
You can see that she's annoyed. Aoko showed no response.
おい、会長。青崎。青子女子。おい、聞いてんのかよ、青崎青子。
さいはね、青を呼ぶな。
Her fury echoed across the student council room. It was a beautiful sound that could be heard into the hallway and made Tobimaru's run from earlier pale in comparison.
やかましい。うるせえのはてめえも同じだ。
Perhaps her shouting was still ringing in his ears, or he was just the type to answer a shout with a shout, but he shot back reflexively.
そんなんだから男の一人もできねえんだよ、お前は。ほら、目覚めたか？
別にあなたの声は聞こえてた。煩わしかったから無視してただけよ。黙らせるの面倒だし。
てめえな、俺はカカなんかか、おい。
コミュニケーションが成立しない点で言えば、あっちのがまだ上品よね。
Ooh, that hurt.
ほう、その心は？
お互い何を言ってるかわからない。意味のない会話なら仰せみたいなものでしょ。
Based on that statement, Aoko must have been under the assumption that dating is the act of two lovers whispering nonsense to each other.
問題は、お前にとって意味のある会話ってのがどの程度の価値かってことだが、まあいいか。いつになくきついじゃねえか、青崎。
ちょっとね、今愛嬌振りまける状況じゃないのよ。
不思議だ。この2年間で青崎の愛嬌なんてものは見たことがないんだが。
飛び丸のいない時に振りまいてたの。
そうかよ。やっぱりあの時のこと恨んでるんだろう、生徒会長さんはよ。
There was only one thing that Tobimaru could be talking about. The incident that occurred in the student council room this past summer.
え？ずいぶんと昔の話じゃないそれ。そんなどうでもいいことに容量を使っちゃもったいないわよ。ただでさえ脳の覚醒部分が少ないのに。
Yeah, what is he talking about? As the conversation wore on, Aoko's murderous aura began to fade, and her sharp gaze gave way to a calmer demeanor rarely seen from her. It was quite possible that nobody besides Tobimaru had ever seen this side of her at school before.
ご忠告どうも。俺だってあんなことは忘れてよ。ただ、さっきその字がバカなこと言いやがるから、つい思い出しちまったんだよ。くそ、考えてみりゃ場所まで一緒じゃねえか。
Sonuji. How did he even get Sonuji? From Sojiro, right? Yeah, well, Sonuji. Despite his ranting, his face betrayed a touch of nostalgia. Aoko, on the other hand, was scowling.
ちょっと待って。あの話、彼にしたの？
おう、俺がてめえになんで会長になんか立候補したのよ。あんたは副会長って顔でしょ、どう見ても。なんて挑発されて生涯最高の月をしたところまでな。
Aoko let out a sigh as if he relieved that Tobimaru had not told Sojiro the rest of the story. Even she wasn't sure why.
あれは確かにびっくりするぐらいいい月だった。思わず体が反応しちゃったものね。ところで、私そんなこと言ったっけ？
Oh, okay, the punch. Yeah, I think I remember. Yeah, he mentioned this last time.
言った。しかも俺が保健室に運ばれたのをこれ幸いと強引に副会長にしやがった。
Since that day, Tobimaru had served as a vice president to the person who had usurped the role from him.
いいけどな。俺に会長職は合わねえって分かったし、副会長の方が性に合ってやがる。会長なんてやってたら危うく親父みたいな野郎になってただろうしよ。
プライド高い分、できることは全部やるからね、飛丸は。会長職に先進するあまり、気がついたら優等生になってたあんたも見たかったけど。
やめてくれ、ゾッとしねえ。猫かぶるのはお前だけで十分だ。
Tobimaru shared Aoko away like an annoying pest. Or shooed, I said showed. Shooed. It was a typical example of the crude verbal abuse they exchange on a daily basis, with a wittiness that only two longtime foes could manage.
で、なんでそんな話したのよ。
は？
半年前のここの事件をなんで彼に話したのよ。
ああ、そっちか。いや、あいつがバカなこと口走ったからなんだが。
He stopped himself before he said any more. He knew better than to let slip the fact that Sojiro had a thing for Aoko. Everyone knew guys didn't sell each other out like that, even if it was all, in truth, a misunderstanding.
それより、さっきのはないんじゃねえのか、青崎。お前、宗十郎に恨みでもあんの
？7日以上前の恨みを引きずるほど私はお姫様じゃないつもりだけど。
He wanted to retort that she was more like a queen than a princess, but he'd come to know her too well over the past 2 years to dig himself into a hole like that.
恨みはないね。それにしちゃ恋に喧嘩売ってただろ。なんでだ。確かに調子の狂うやつだが、あいつほどいいやつはいねえだろうに。おい待て、なんだその足元のシロアリを見るかのような態度は。
別にあんたまでそのセリフを言うのかって心底から見下げ果てただけよ。まあいっか。いいやつ、いい人、結構じゃない？喧嘩を売る相手としちゃ上等だわ。誰も憎んであげないなら私ぐらいそうしないとね。
She said casually, having regained her composure.
しないとねって、お前。
Tobimaru could not follow her reasoning at all. Tobimaru was used to Aoko's erratic trains of thought, but hating Sojiro for no reason seemed needlessly cruel. His friend's naive and innocent face came to mind, and then he blurted.
けど、宗十郎は青崎が好きなんだぜ。それでも嫌いなのか？
Okay. Let me guess. She's gonna be blushing here. His vow's silence has lasted not even 2 minutes.
いや、 今のはな、青崎。
He tried to take it back, but it was too late. She had heard his words loud and clear. All he could hope for now was that she would take it well.
そりゃそうでしょ。好き嫌いは誰にもあるし。
What? Because I like what I like and I dislike what I don't like.
けどこればかりはね。彼が私と仲良くしたいって言っても、私は嫌いなんだから仕方ない。
Okay. Stone cold Alco. Tobimaro found himself filled with indignation at how detached Alco was being.
いや、そんなお友達感覚の話じゃなくてだな。そういう好き嫌いじゃなくて、その字は本気でお前に惚れてるって言ったんだよ。
He shouted, his face the embodiment of sincerity. Alco gave him a blank stare. It was the face of someone who had lost their wallet hours earlier and was only just realizing it now. The first instant of doubt that ushers in the reality of the situation. But an instant is all it was.
で?
She answered coolly, as if she had no idea why it should matter to her at all.
でときたか。鬼でもなけりゃ悪魔だな。お前って女は。よかろう。聞こえなかったのならもう一度言ってやる。
Tobimaro gave up any pretense of masculine solidarity and fired back hard.
いいわよ、そんなの。つまらないもの。
She ruthlessly cut him off. Thinking of the boys who still harbored unrequited love for Alco, Tobimaro tried hard to come up with a name befitting the demoness in front of him. Okay. One name.
なるほどね。それでさっきの話に結びつくわけだ。へえ、柄にもなく友達思いじゃない？殿下。ってことは、聞くも無残、語るも無情っていう私の噂話、教えてあげたんでしょ？
She laughed as a fiendish smile adorned her face. Tobimaro repented to God, whoever and wherever he or she might be forever bringing up Alca's love life.
飛び丸にしちゃ正しい判断ね。褒めてあげるから、どんな話をしたのか聞きたいな、私。
She was smiling, but Tobimaro wished she'd at least try to hide the bloodlust.
代表作とここでの事件を2つばかり。
Alco nodded with satisfaction as she listened to Tobimaro's hesitant answer.
こういう時、噂話って便利よね。うるさいのを追っ払ってくれるから。でも、そんな話を考えなしで広めたら大変だから、これからは気をつけてね。
Had this been in writing, the chillingly sweet tone of her words could have been signed with a heart. Whether angry or happy, Aozaki spoke in a disturbingly cute manner when she was in a heightened emotional state. Tobimaro took note of this new discovery, aware that it did nothing to get him out of the situation.
ああ、俺も命は惜しいからな。口はもう滑らねえよ。けどよ、青崎。本気で宗十郎が嫌いなのか？
He knew that it was a topic he would be better off avoiding, but he tried asking anyway. The bonds between men at times shine more beautifully than a pearl.
まあ、好きじゃないから嫌いっていうわけじゃないけど、私が彼のことを嫌う理由は自分でもわからない。だからダメなのね、きっと。
Perhaps to placate Tobimaro, Aoko paused in contemplation before she answered. Giving it a moment without immediately blurting out a response meant that not even he could complain.
そうか。ま、そういうことならしょうがねえか。何しろ、綺麗さっぱり感情論だ。 お互い理由もなく好きと嫌いじゃ手を貸す隙間もねえわけだし。
Thinking that would be the end of it, Tobimaro looked up toward the ceiling and silently apologized to Sojiro. However, his final sentence appeared to have piqued Aoko's interest.
待って。今の、どういう意味？
Her fall cheer had vanished. Falling to pick up on this, Tobimaro answered nonchalantly.
いや、あいつもさ、青崎に惚れた理由がわからないなんて言いやがってよ。ああ、違ったか。理由なんてないなんて意味だったかな。
Tobimaro was still in disbelief that Sojiro had been charmed by Aoko's appearance, so he purposely left that part out.
理由はないですって。
ああ、なんで俺がいくらお前の噂話をしても無駄だった。天津さえなんて言ってたかな。そうそう、理由はどうあれ青崎の心配は本物なんだとか、自分はそれで助かってるとか、俺なんかには言えないセリフだったのは確かだね。どうにもはっきりしてんのは他の野郎どもと違って、噂を聞いても手を引く素振りなんざみじんもなかったってことだけ。
Tobimaro finally noticed that shift in Aoko's demeanor. She was scowling at the wall. She glared at it in silence like it was her worst enemy, and this continued for several minutes.
何それ？さっきといいそれといい、どこかで聞いたようなことばっかり。
She's literally shaking. Look at that. I mean, the character sprite is literally shaking there. So great was her ire that the gnashing of her teeth was audible. The irritation seeded until it reached the point that Aoko had forgot Tobimaro was even in the room. Tobimaro looked heavenward for forgiveness, sensing that he'd brought further calamity down upon Sojiro's head.
少しわかったわ。なんであいつが気に食わないのか。
Tobimaro looked away as if to indicate that he'd rather not know, but Aoko ignored him and began to grumble venomously.
あいつ、私が嫌いなやつと言動が似てるのよ。誰彼構わずいい人扱いされるところとか、妙にふわふわしてるところとか、いちいち私の勘に触るところとか。
Glancing idly up at the clock, Tobimaro thought the last part just sounded like misplaced anger. And that was that. 1 o'clock had come and gone.
わかった。もういい。この話をした俺が悪かった。で、俺に用ってのはなんだよ。言っとくけど、もう授業始まってるぜ。
え？授業ってなんで？いつ？
いや、さっきその字が出てってから、青月がギラーンって壁に睨んでた時にチャイムが鳴ったんだよ。いいわ
けないでしょ。なんで黙ってんのよ、あんたは。
Hey, what did he say? I accidentally clicked it. She looked like she was on the verge of tears as she shouted and pulled at his necktie. Tobimaro raised his hands in mock surrender gesture reserved only for the true victor.
蚊の方がエレガントなんて言いやがった仕返しだ。思い知るがいい。男の純情を踏みにじったり焼き殺したりするエリート悪魔め。
相変わらず細かく根に持つ男。言動には言動で返しなさいよね、卑怯者。
She tied his necktie around his neck with a yank. The vice president smiled a thuggish grin as if her reaction made his victory that much sweeter.
お前の古典が破滅に向かっているのは周知の事実。そして A 組の5次元目は言うまでもない藤代のばあさん。 青崎のこと嫌ってるしな。
Fujishiro had one of the longest tenures at school, so it was only natural she would be in charge of teaching the classics.
さあ、こんなところで俺のネクタイを引っ張る余裕があるのなら、急いで自分の教室に立ち返るがいい。情けだ。別に止めはしねえよ。
くそ、あんたなんかにはめられるなんて。このまま死んでしまえ。
I like this drawing though, yeah. She choked him even harder with his necktie. As Aoko put words into action and mercilessly strangled Tobimaru, he saw his life flash before his eyes.
いや、待て待て。本当に死んじまうだろうが。今ならまだ間に合う。10分過ぎたら遅刻から欠席扱いだぞ。
Aoko glanced up at the clock. It was still only 7 past 1. Her route was from the student council room onto the second floor to Class A classroom, the 3rd floor. If she ran, she could make it.
命拾ったわね、飛び丸。
Aoko clicked her tongue disappointedly. What disturbed Tobimaru was that it didn't sound like an empty threat.
あと放課後、ここにいて。頼みたいことがあるのは本当なんだから。
She was halfway out of the room before she even finished her sentence. Finally, all alone, Tobimaru closed the open door, locked it, and slumped into a chair.
たく。ああしてる分には楽しいやつなんだけどよ。青崎は。
He leaned back in the creaky folding chair and let out a sigh. The weather outside was beautiful, but the sunlight waned early in the winter. Before long, daylight would fade and the unheated student council room would grow colder and colder. All of the good equipment, like the heater and had ended up in the main office, so he had no choice but to settle in for a chilly afternoon.
こんな天気が続けばいいんだがね。天気予報じゃ、また雲行き怪しいって話だが。
After his somewhat suggestive monologue, Tobimaru's mind drifted. He idly wondered to himself whether Sojiro was an overcast day or a clear day sort of guy, but no answers came. The school day over, Sojiro headed straight to his job. While the school had approved his jobs at the Chinese restaurant and fish market in Misaki shopping district, there was other work he hadn't mentioned to them. How many jobs does this kid have? And it was not because he knew that they would complain at him working too many, but rather because of the illicit nature of one job in particular. And yeah, how long are his shifts per job, right? Today, his workplace was a pachinko parlor in front of Yashirogi Station. Sojiro changed out of his school uniform and into a block fall tuxedo uniform, and then began cleaning the storefront. Yashirogi was a jewel of Misaki City, a busy place with a vast assortment of commercial centers and shopping arcades. Okay, why is the screen like this? Where there are people en masse, there were products made en masse. A romantic might describe it as a place of joy. A realist would note the free enterprise, and a cynic would point at all the garbage. Local authorities had attempted to beautify Yashirogi, but there was one basic tenet of society they could not overcome. This establishment was the embodiment of that rule. Businesses such as this attracted the dregs of society, and such, the front of the parlor had to be cleaned several times a day. Sojiro stood outside in the winter cold, sweeping used-up cigarette butts, picking up discarded flyers and tossing empty cans into the trash. Something about it must have reminded him of mountain life because he cheerfully finished the job with ease. After making sure the storefront was acceptably clean, he returned to the inside of the parlor where it was nice and warm. Blinding lights, deafening sounds, and the oppressive odor of the tobacco assaulted him as he passed through the parlor on his way to the office.
店長、外回りの掃除終わりました。
はい、ご苦労様。それでいいかな。2階の40番台のお客さんの様子見てきてくれない？どうも懐に飲んでそうなんだよね、あのお姉さん。
His boss was a good-natured man who used to work a desk job. The reason he employed someone like Sojiro, even though he was clearly a student, was not because he admired him for working his way through school. It was because all of the other employees were scary and intimidating, and he wanted to at least get one employee who was not.
いいんですか？トイレの掃除まだですけど。
いいのいいの。なんかね、カメラの死角にいるんでいまいち確証取れないの。そうちゃん、今のところ的中率 100% でしょ。様子見てきてくれないかな。
Hearing that, Sojiro put away his cleaning equipment and headed upstairs. It was typically a large-scale pachinko parlor with 2 floors. It prided itself on being a local establishment that was satisfied with taking the locals' money little by little without resorting to more exploitative means. But regardless of the parlor's intentions, its customers were not so scrupulous. Among them were casual players, professional gamblers, and cheaters looking to profit by exploiting whatever loopholes they could find. Of particular prevalence was a device developed in the mid-80s that could disrupt a machine's circuitry from the outside and make it much easier to get what was called a 777 jackpot. As much as the parlor wanted to deny these cheaters entry, it needed to present hard evidence of cheating or risk losing customers. Particularly in the service industry, innocent until proven guilty was not a rule taken lightly. As a result, they could only punish the customers they caught in the act. Such cheaters were known as gotoshi, a slice of society which Sojiro knew nothing about. What he did know was that they were inconveniencing his employer and violating their rules. He went upstairs. The radio and game machine sounds on the second floor were quieter than the cacophony downstairs. There were 100 game machines on the ground and over 80 on the second. While there were some empty seats here and there, it was a solid evening turnout. The machine mentioned by his boss was in the center aisle. Sojiro nonchalantly leaned back against the wall and watched the customer hit the jackpot over and over again. Wait, that's the customer? The second he saw her, his gut told him that she was not cheating. He still was not sure that or what made someone a master swindler, but if it meant that they were special, this woman certainly fit the description. Jesus Christ. It was almost as if he could feel the luck emanating from her. As if the customer looked on, silently turned the handle again and again. She apparently appeared older than Sojiro. She wore a green form-fitting one-piece dress. A pair of stockings covered her legs. Her slender legs were gracefully crossed, and her elegance suited a painting better than a casino. Her dark reddish hair was cut short into a bob, perfectly framing her stylish spectacles and crimson lips. Truth be told, something was off about this picturesque beauty, ringing the jackpot over and over again. 4 boxes worth of pachinko balls sat at her feet, and her winning streak showed no signs of abating. She looked bored as her slender porcelain fingers lifted a long cigarette to her lips.
なんかどっかで。
Just as that thought crossed his mind, her gaze turned toward the wall and Sojiro. Okay, what? Suddenly a chill ran down his spine. Why, is this woman or this lady dangerous? He reflexively covered his mouth to keep from shrieking.
あの人、昨日の。
Acting on pure instinct, Sojiro took off running. He headed straight downstairs, desperate not to be on the same floor as her. He would have run straight out the door, but for his obligations to his job...
店長、早退します。それと、2階の人は問題ないです。
Okay, he just left like this. He tried to keep his composure as he spoke, jamming his school uniform into a paper bag as he ran out of the parlor. Cloudy weather brought by the shadow of night over Yashirogi as he ran through the shopping arcade toward the station. He shot up the long staircase like an arrow, quickly pulled his train pass from his wallet, and passed through the ticket gate. The ticket gate was crowded with people standing around, walking and talking. The station attendant by the automatic ticket machine had an unpleasant look on his face. There was now familiar, comforting hustle and bustle around him. Just another day in the city. Nothing like what he witnessed the night before. He could finally breathe again. The momentary rush of belief or relief brought him to an abrupt stop. He nervously turned around. There was no way that dangerous individual could be behind him.
って考えてみると
He couldn't think of a good reason for why he'd fled so desperately. As far as he could remember, he hadn't even seen the threat's face long enough to form an opinion about her. Sojiro gave himself a good slap on the cheek to pull himself together and quickly made his way down to the platform. Unfortunately, the next train was 10 minutes away and panicking would do him no favor, so he quietly found an empty seat and sat down. He took another deep breath. He was surrounded by people waiting for the train just like he was. And no sign of anyone pursuing him. His head finally cleared up and he assured himself that he was overthinking things. Though he was surprised at how heavy his shoulders felt.
疲れてるのは分かってる。自分の体のことだし。
Sojiro sighed as his greater than expected fatigue. He had certainly struggled since coming down from the mountains, but in retrospect, it could have been worse. Physically, he was probably holding up fine. He was much less confident in his mental state. The city and the mountains could not have been more different. He had been slow to recognize the difference and adapt. Acclimation was simple enough. Humans were nothing if not adaptable, even without any effort. One would learn to adjust over time. Recognizing the challenge that had been a hard part.
そりゃとにかく難しいことだらけだし。
Sojiro grumbled out complaint he'd never uttered before. To be honest, he was still afraid to wander around town. There were so many things sighted people or city people took for granted that Sojiro had yet to grasp. It was a little wonder that this never-ending chain of surprises would wear on him.
そっか。疲れてるのは体じゃないのか。だからあんな幻を見る。
He muttered to himself, then shook his head. That which exists. Such was the way of all things. Tobimaru had called it a hallucination, but Sojiro knew what he saw was real. The city was a magical kingdom compared to the mountains. If there were real magicians secretly living here, that should have been no surprise at all. The thought alone made his legs tremble. He had feared the unnatural ever since he encountered a wild bear on a mountain as a child.
いや、あれはこんなもんじゃなかったっけ。 なりふり構わず泣き叫んだもんな、あの時は。
Sojiro smiled a little as he recalled his traumatic childhood memory. Anyone would have fainted at the sudden appearance of a growling beast that towered over 6 feet tall. I mean, it's a bear, man. That thing would maul you, even if it's like much more smaller. The monster in the movie that Sojiro saw not 2 days ago was the equivalent of a cuddly stuffed animal when compared to the wild mountain creatures. He was reminded that he'd faced far worse before, and his ordeal now was something he could endure.
そうだよな。今の問題は、ちらっと聞こえた最後のセリフか。捕まえて始末するっていうのはどうなんだ?
At face value, the meaning was obvious, but the implications were simply too frightening to contemplate seriously. Perhaps he had heard or misheard the words, or perhaps the speaker had misspoke.
都会のルール。誰かがきっと罰しに来る。か。
Even as he said it, the idea didn't feel quite real. It was hard to imagine that it applied to him. Sojiro breathed in and closed his eyes. His vision dimmed, putting the illuminated cityscape out of sight and out of mind. For now, he resolved to put last night's events behind him. When he opened his eyes, his breathing had calmed.
それでさ、青崎を殴りつけようとして結局どうなったんだ、飛び丸。
The question popped into Sojiro's head. He decided he would ask next time and stood up from his chair as a long streak of light blazed by announcing the arrival of the next train. We finished a chapter. Okay, let's see archive. Did we unlock anything new? Lunchtime. I guess we saw this already. City style. Yeah, it's not saying new, so I guess we read it already. So we got nothing new this time. So every chapter, you don't really get anything, what do you call this? Like this one, 1.5. Okay. Okay, so yeah, finished chapter 2, I suppose. How many chapters are in this game? But it was fun. It was pretty fun watching Aoko there and Tobimaru. I love those scenes. Yeah, just them talking casually. But yeah, second half of this chapter or second half of this episode, I mean, kind of became a little intense. Are we gonna be going there now? Is it gonna be, or yeah, is this story or the story gonna be much more serious now? We are gonna have to see. So we are gonna continue this and do more of Witch on the Holy Night in the next one. So I'll just see you then, guys. Bye bye.